Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you get more information, see past shows at www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Oralene Simmons and David King with the Martin Luther King Jr. Association. And folks, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. So if you're watching it, that's Dr. Simmons up top and David King. You can wave to people. They're watching this, guys. Okay, there you go. Dr. Oralene Simmons is an internationally recognized lifetime civil rights leader and the award-winning visionary founder of Asheville's annual Martin Luther King Jr. Prayer Breakfast and distinguished recipient of the National MLK Commission's Making the King Holiday Award presented to her by Mrs. Coretta Scott King. Very exciting. Dr. Simmons speaks and teaches widely, inspires audiences locally, nationally, and globally about her journey in civil rights alongside a path of nonviolence in the tradition of Dr. King. In her memoirs, a book based on her inspirational lectures about her life titled Journey to Myself, that was published in 2018. David King is a native of Asheville. He attended local public schools, AB Tech College, and Western Carolina University, followed by a career in manufacturing for 23 years in different mid-management positions. He and his wife owned and operated 2 small businesses, and he's also a horse farrier. He teaches a popular course on trimming horses' hooves at AB Tech's campus in Marshall, and he served as Buncombe County Commissioner, that's how I know your name, from 2012 to 2014. He served on numerous government boards and nonprofits, currently serving on the NLK Association of Asheville, Buncombe County, and AB Tech Board of Trustees. And so the first question I ask you, I guess I'll ask both separately, is as a child, I'll ask Dr. Simmons, you grew up where, Dr. Simmons?
As a child, I grew up in Madison County, which is about 20 miles from here in Mars Hill, North Carolina. I went to the elementary school there, which is the Anderson Rosenwald School, and I remember being bused to Asheville to go to middle school. During my high school years, I moved to Asheville and attended the historical Stevens Lee High School, but always going home on weekends and holidays, and then decided that I would go home for college. It was an all-white college, but I was going home to school, and so therefore I continued my civil rights work and became the first African-American student at the Mars Hill University.
Oh, was it really? Okay, because I know the university very well. When did you decide you wanted to go into the civil rights work? Was there a time that...
Probably when I entered school, because as I said, I had to be bused from Madison County to Buncombe County, and my school bus passed all of these schools on the way to Asheville, but our bus couldn't stop there because of segregation. So I knew I had to travel for miles, passing schools that I could not attend to get to an all-Black school. And I knew that something was wrong there, and I wanted to do something to make it right. So I kept that thought in my mind, and also I knew that one day I would be going back home to go to Mars Hill University, which was my big dream. So when I was in high school, I became a member of the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, popularly known as ASCORA. and participated in sit-in demonstrations to integrate the public library, lunch counters. We even picketed a grocery store, asking them to please hire an African American, even if it was a bag boy. So that was the beginning of the civil me fitting into the civil rights movement.
And that's, they mentioned the hiring the bag boy. Did they hire somebody?
Yes, but the store closed down.
Oh, okay, but that's at least made
We had a strong picket line.
now, same thing too, very interesting. So you went to Mars Hill University, but it
Yes.
wasn't integrated. I mean, you were the first one to integrate Mars Hill University.
Yes.
And so that was quite a change. Were you active in civil rights at Mars Hill University?
Yes, I was, because I was the only Black student there. But my dream of attending that university came from long time family ties. My great-great-grandfather was a slave named Joe Anderson, and he molded the bricks for the first school building there for white students to attend. And when the contractor wanted to collect his fee in full, the Board of Trustees found themselves embarrassed because they did not have the last payment. So they had to hold something or somebody for security. My great-great-grandfather was considered chattel, and he was put in the prison in Buncombe County until the school trustees were able to raise the amount of money that was needed. And if they had not raised that amount of money, he would have been sold at the auction block to the highest bidder. But fortunately for him and his family, and for Mars Hill, the money was raised and he was returned home to his family.
And about when was that, the time framework?
It was in the late 1800s.
Okay.
Because he was freed after slavery. He lived a very productive life. He became chair of the committee for African American students, so that they could get an elementary education. He sent my grandmother, Effie Anderson, and sister, Kari Anderson, to school in Asheville, so that they could become teachers and to teach the children in Mars Hill. So she became their first teacher.
Fascinating. David, the same question. You grew up, you said, in the Asheville area. Are you born and raised in Asheville?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and so you stayed in Asheville all your life?
Mostly, except for a few years that I lived in Haywood County. I've been in Asheville most of these years, yes.
Okay, so same question, which is kind of interesting. I understand Dr. Simmons' background, but how did you get involved in the civil rights movement?
Not quite the way Dr. Simmons did. Obviously, growing up a white kid here in Buncombe County, that was probably not something on my mind. It wasn't something that I had to worry about like she had to worry about. And my involvement, I guess you would say, started with being asked to join the Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County Board in 2015. And up to that point, here again, it wasn't something that I actively thought about or gave much consideration to. But when I asked, I thought this would be a good thing to do, and an opportunity to learn, basically edify myself about issues. And so once I was asked to sit on the board, I came on the board to fill an unfilled position at that point. And Dr. Simmons and I, we kind of hit it off right away, and we talked, and we found that we had a common interest, and that was families and genealogy. And that's how this all started, with she and I working and ultimately finding out we are the same family.
Explain that. How are you the same family?
We found out that our great-great-grandmother, Martha Ruthina, we know her as Ruthenia, or some people as Fine King, is our common grandmother.
Is that cool? And how'd you find that? How'd that come about?
Well, I knew about her because I had worked on this for some time in past years, but what I did not know was that she was a Black woman. And that was one of those things that I'm sure many white families had and kept a secret. So it took a little time to dig that out and work on it. Oralene and I have spent many hours talking about this and working on it. And I made a lot of contacts and ultimately got kind of dug that information out of some of the people who knew, because it's almost all but forgotten and lost in history.
So when you dug that out, which is kind of cool, you found out now that you all of a sudden had a whole rest of the family you never knew about beforehand. You had a whole bunch of cousins.
Right.
Is that cool? I mean, so after you found that out, did you then do you have family gatherings now, or do you have also everybody gets together on both sides of the family?
Oh, yes. Dr. Simmons and I do with our immediate families. And I will say this too, we would have never known this without DNA. And the component is I have the trace DNA. I have between 1% and 2% of the Cameroon, Congo, and Bantu people, which Oralene and I share. And at first, I didn't know what that meant until I was dining one night with some friends, and this lady who is a Black lady also is a very astute genealogist, and mentioned that and said, well, I guess all of us have a certain amount. And she said, oh no, that this may go back to Virginia. You've got a grandparent somewhere not too far back. So I started digging into it and found out that if you got even that small amount, it's only less than 3 or 4 generations back.
So you discovered you had a grandmother. Was that what you said? A common
Yes.
grandmother. But was she around when you discovered that?
No, she died in 1930.
Oh, okay. So long gone, but that would have been something to met her. Then, if you would, you mentioned that you both then became involved with the Martin Luther King Jr. Association. I'm not familiar with it, David. Could you tell me what that is?
Well, Dr. Simmons is the founder of the local chapter here, if you will, or the organization. And that was over 40 years ago. She founded it. I think she could probably tell you more about the founding than I could, but I'm a late comer to the organization.
Then forget the question, ignore it. Dr. Simmons, I'll go back to you if you would. So the association, the Martin Luther King Jr. Association, tell me what it is, if you would, please.
I was employed at Astra Parks and Recreation, and I worked as a center director, and I had to plan programs and activities monthly. And I asked my supervisor, now this was 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, I asked my supervisor what would be her feelings on me doing a Martin Luther King celebration as a special event for January, because at that time it was kind of controversial. And she said, oh, I think that's a great idea. Do that. And so I planned this little small breakfast at this little small center, and that morning it just snowed heavily, and I was thinking that, oh, we're just going to have just a few people from the community, but oh no, we had 75 people. And I thought it was just going to be something that I would do that one time and that would never do it again. But the civil rights feeling was still in here, and I still wanted to continue on those lines. So I did it the next year and the next year, and it continued to grow and grow. And on the fifth year, Shirley Chisholm was our keynote speaker, and the fire marshal told me that I had to move out of the small recreation center. So then we went to the civic center, and that morning we had 2,000 people to attend.
Wait, can I just jump in a second? And I'm getting
Yes.
chill when you tell the story, because Shirley Chisholm, I've never met her, unfortunately, but she had a profound impact on me, on my life, because her quote, I have it pretty much down, has made a big impact on my life. And she said, David, I don't know if you know the quote, but she says, service is the rent we pay for living on earth. And I have it on my wall here, and I live my life by that quote from Shirley Chisholm. And I can't believe you had her so many years ago. Amazing woman, huh?
It's kind of hard for me to believe, and I would just send her a letter and ask her if she would come and speak, and she replied that she would come and speak.
Wow.
If we paid her $500.
Yeah.
$500 plus hotel accommodation and airfare. That was very, very exciting for us, because that was a year that it became the city, county, state, and national holiday.
Oh.
And what a great honor. She's such a beautiful lady, gave such an inspiring speech, and folks started to look forward to the next event and the next event. And after 27 years of working for the city, I retired, and my supervisor allowed me to take that particular program with me and create a nonprofit 501c3 cooperation. And I was able to assemble a board and to expand on the programs honoring Dr. King. Not only do we now celebrate the birthday, but we have other activities almost monthly. Many are educational. This past year, we gave $50,000 scholarships to outstanding young high school students so that they can get a higher education. We have a number of great activities that we're looking forward to for next year. And next event up, we will gather again for the prayer breakfast and for assembling that board. Years later, David became a member of the board. I did not know him. I was just told that he would be a great board member and a very nice man. And I did find out that he was a very nice man. And one evening he came to the meeting, and he said that he had been talking to his brother, and that his brother said that we were cousins. And I just really couldn't believe this. And then, I kind of brushed that off, and David told me again. And I said, well, David, how do you know this? And he said, look at Ancestry. He said, we're matched there. And I remembered when I first joined Ancestry, which was probably about 20 years ago. I was busy looking for cousins, saw the king there, but kind of dismissed it again because I was excited about having done my DNA, finding family members, and I was really looking for African American family members. And when I saw King and looked at the DNA, I just kind of dismissed it and said, I don't want to take the time to explore this. But then after David told me, then we connected and we started doing some serious search, and I found a whole new family that I didn't know that I had. And I mean, these are close relatives because I was adopted as a child. And so it's just been very interesting. It's very interesting to find out how some family members embrace you or they do not embrace you. But at the root of all of that, I know I still have David as my cousin. And not only is he my cousin, he's one of my best friends.
Sweet.
And we're getting ready again to dive in this and see if we can find some of our other family members that we have been wondering about for a very long time.
And before I turn to David, let me just go back to something you had said, Dr. Simmons, back to Chisholm. And one of the unfortunate things is I don't think enough people recognize how amazing the woman was in terms of, I tell people, Dr. Simmons, she was right, the first African-American woman to ever run for president. She was the first African-American woman congresswoman in New York City, just amazing. And we don't hear that too much. You heard about Hillary Clinton, but you never heard about, Chisholm, who was the real trailblazer. And if I can go and back to something else you said, I just have one question. And you said, so you had Shirley Chisholm. How do you top that after, you said 2,000 people, national speaker. How do you top that after that?
It was hard. And I did stay connected to her for years. We communicated together. I still have the letter that she sent to me, and it was written in red ink. And I have that framed, and I just checked the other day to see what the value of that letter is now, and that was very surprising to me. But after Shirley Chisholm, we were able to get a number of other civil rights leaders, and particularly some of those who had worked closely with Dr. King. And so we went through that long list, and yes, we were able to get those folks to come to Asheville and to speak. And I think we exhausted that
Sure.
list, and then had to start looking in other places. And we continue to have outstanding speakers. This last year, my grandson was the keynote speaker. His name is Preston Blakely. He is the mayor of Fletcher, North Carolina.
Okay, sure.
And he is the youngest active mayor in the state of North Carolina. So he really made history. And then for the 40th year, for me to see him standing there at the podium and delivering this beautiful speech was just such a precious time for me. And it was also a precious time for David, because David has had the opportunity of working closely with him. And I think he talks to David almost daily, and probably me once a week or once every 2 weeks.
Let me go back to David then. So the question before I talk about this other work you've done, what led you to get DNA testing? What led you to start researching your family background?
I'd always been interested in the family story. I'm not so much interested in just finding names and birth dates and death dates. I want to know the story. And that's something Dr. Simmons and I have in common, is that we want to know the story.
Yes.
The information is fine. Would like to have that, but what makes these people is their story, and their story is ultimately our story. And my brother was also into ancestry before I was, and so that's how I kind of got into it. I'm a little bit late comer to that than Dr. Simmons and my brother. I've been in maybe 6 years, something like that now. But once I got in it even deeper.
So you certainly came in at a very opportune time, in terms of all of a sudden now that Martin Luther King, the group, the association, has become, I guess, pretty active now all of a sudden. And we'll talk specifically about the whole controversy, if we can, with the Vance Monument. And I guess you were involved in that. You and Dr. Simmons and other people were involved in that.
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
both.
were.
Yeah, and talk about your involvement in that, and I'll ask Dr. Simmons to talk about it as well. But how did the association get involved in that?
The association itself wasn't involved in it. Dr. Simmons and I, as individuals, applied to be on that commission. She lives in the city, so she applied to the city council for admission to that. I live in the county, so I applied to the county commission. Each entity put up half of the members. There were 12 members on there. The county did 6, city did 6, and we both felt very strongly about being on that commission and the importance of it. And for me, I was wanted to be there to support my cousin, Dr. Simmons, and also to, this, for me, coming to this was, it's a life-changing thing. I grew up your typical white Southern. I grew up on the Confederacy, on Robert E. Lee, on all of these things that we don't challenge. You don't think about it. It's just part of that culture, part of that fabric. Well, through the work that they're able to do with Dr. Simmons and the MLK Association, I got a broader view of these things, and it helped me grow as a person and understand other people. And also, I wanted to be on that commission with her as well, because our great-great-grandmother would have 2 children sitting on that commission, making that decision. One of her black children, one of her white children. And it was something that was, I think, very important to both of us.
Now, the decision, I followed a little bit, but what was impressive is that there was a lot of support behind the decision, it seemed to me, right? We'd say that, Dr. Simmons, that even your group, the committee, were they unanimous on recommendation on this?
For the task force?
Yeah.
We had one person to vote no. And David, correct me if I'm wrong. There was only one one person. The task force, as David said, was made up of appointees from the city council and from county commission. And we had community engagement, listening to pros and cons, and then coming up with a decision. And that decision was to make recommendation to the county commission and to city council for removal. And it was accepted by both of the bodies.
And what's very exciting to me as a member of the community is but update me on this. So it was removed, but is it still being challenged in the courts, or it's not?
Yes.
There hasn't been a final decision. And David, if I can, so what's the challenge remaining on this?
There's a group of people, I think it's mainly the local Sons of Confederate Veterans Camp 26 have put together a group. They don't call it that. They call it's a historical
Right.
Group. I can't remember the name of it, but they have the funding to challenge this. So it's been held up at the state Supreme Court level. It's still sitting there.
So, but it was removed, right? Or you go downtown?
That's correct. All of it was removed but the base. The stones are held somewhere. We're held in reserve until this whole thing is resolved.
And so how it gets resolved, nobody knows what would happen. I mean, would they try to recreate the monument then, or what do you think is the goal?
I mean, we're hoping for a dismissal of this at some point, or a resolution ruling in our favor. That this, I think the longer it sits, the more likely it comes out in our favor.
Okay, but it's incredible because it's been dragging on for how long?
Since 2020, is that correct, Oralene? Yes, we did the we end on 2020, right before Thanksgiving, we took our vote on that.
Yes.
So it's exciting that, I mean, I was very excited the vote came out, but what's frustrating, and probably for you two more so, is that how this drags on. But I guess that's the nature of politics. You know, it's just incredible that it's 3 years later and we still don't have a resolution to this, you know. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Dr. Simmons, if I can ask you in terms of some of the other things then the association's involved with. So you have an annual speaker, is that correct? An annual speaker?
Yes, and that is for the birthday celebration. We have an annual speaker, a choir. See, what else do we do for that particular day? That's on the Saturday morning. And then on Monday morning, which is the official holiday, we have our Martin Luther King Peace March. We gather at a church and for fellowship, and then we march to City County Plaza for a rally where we have more speakers. More fellowship and more music. And then on Monday night, we have the candlelight service, and we recognize individuals in the community who have exemplified the philosophies of Dr. Martin Luther King. Then for February, we celebrate John Lewis Day, and again, honoring outstanding men who have made contributions to our community. And that is followed by Rosa Parks Day for Women's Month in March, and sometime in April. And then it is time for us to start on our scholarship program. We send scholarship applications to schools and to youth organizations, to churches. You can go online and get them. We ask the students to compose an essay and tell us about their community activities, and then we award scholarships. We did have the opportunity to do the community remembrance project where we identified places where hangings of African Americans had taken place and put in markers. We celebrate other holidays. This past Juneteenth, we were able to produce an outdoor festival as well as a week-long lunch and learn activities. And we also had movie night for 4 nights in a row for Juneteenth, and all of this culminated with the outdoor festival, where we had entertainment. We had vendor booths for craft and food. We had stations for children, and we wanted everyone to join us in learning more about Juneteenth, why it's important that we celebrate Juneteenth. And not only that, the takeaway is, where do we go from here? And that flows right into our annual breakfast of where we are going from here.
In terms of folks finding out more about Martin Luther King Association, 2 questions if I can. Number one, is this a national organization as well?
We are the Dr. Martin Luther King Association of Asheville and Buncombe County.
Gotcha.
Yes, and we do have a website,
and that is what, please? The website?
Martin Luther King, help me, David.
Is that the name of it? Martin Luther King help
MLKasheville.com. MLKasheville.com.
Okay.
You can go there and you can see some of the videos of our past activities, and it will tell you how you can become involved, how you can sign up for our newsletter so that you can stay informed, and an invitation to all of our events that's open to the public.
Okay, very exciting. And if I can ask you one other thing, Dr. Simmons,
Yes.
we mentioned before that you wrote a book, and if you would talk a little bit, I love the title, Journey to Myself. Talk a little bit about the book, if you would, please.
I am still working on the book. Yes, it is Journey to Myself. That the beginning is about me growing up in Madison County and being just a little girl, and about my feelings, and days of happiness, days of sadness, and about the integration movement, and an awful lot about my time at Morris University. There were a lot of challenges and things that I had to overcome, things that I had to deal with, the harassment, and also creating the Martin Luther King Association, and my interaction with so many people who have come into my life that has brought great meaning and joy, and along with that, the sadness of some things, and really finding myself. And it is a journey to myself, from the beginning, the changes that I have made in my life, and my attitude, and how I see things differently as I grow old gracefully.
And so this is still a work in progress, is that?
This is still
Okay.
a work
Gotcha.
in progress. And every year I say it's going to be next year. It's going to be next year. So it's going to be next year.
But, you know, David, listening to this story, it's just an incredible story. I'll ask you maybe too, do you recall when you were growing up, you said in Asheville area, Asheville Public Schools, it's hard for me to remember because I don't know if I grew up in it when it was segregated, right? And so you were in schools when they were segregated as a kid?
Yes, yes.
And so it's hard to like even comprehend. So there was a time when there were no blacks in schools when you went. Is that the case?
Right, right. As my early years in school was at the old Biltmore School. I started there in '59. It was still 1 through 12.
And so
And
when
then
did Asheville schools become segregated? Integrated, I'm sorry.
About 65 is when Shiloh School combined with Biltmore School, and you know, it wasn't a big deal at the time. There was nothing, at least in my household, nothing said or mentioned about it. It just, you know, you go back to school that year, and there were some black kids that were there. It wasn't a large number. Obviously, there were smaller numbers, and you know, things just. We were young. We were, you know, small kids. So I think I was maybe in the 4th grade. So it was a smooth transition.
So
But that's not always true, you know, but other places.
But as Dr. Simmons is talking, I'm thinking, David, there's a book here for you as well, too. You know, I mean,
Yes.
just the story itself. I don't know if it's a joint effort, but just such an incredible story. You know, at the age of whatever age you are, that all of a sudden you discover you had a whole nother family, the hidden family. You know, I think there's, you know, a book there for you, or maybe Dr. Simmons' next book or something. But it's a fascinating story how you guys became friends.
You know, there's a lot of emotions around all this, and Oralene and I've talked about this quite a bit. And you know, when you discover it, it's something that, you know, I was maybe 66 years old before I knew this, and also come to find out there's a lot of other white people with a similar story.
I can imagine.
But and I think part of it was like, how do I not know this? You know, but you know, it was something that had I known, or you know, at that time, what would I've done with one of my black friends? We've talked about this, and she said, "What would you have done if you'd known it? What good would it have done?" And she's actually right, but still, that's why it's important for us to talk about these issues now and talk about things we being white, you didn't have to think about it. You didn't have to challenge it. You know, going back to the monument issue and the difference in the life I grew up with here in Asheville versus Orlene's experience. And here again, going back, we're the same children of a black great-great-grandmother. You know, I was able to go into the library. I was able to go into restaurants. There were white restrooms on the square up there, just below the monument on the ground. You know, none of those things were accessible to her. Sears and Roebuck, when we all went, they had black and white restrooms and fountains. Those were things that I was pretty much oblivious to because it didn't affect me. Simply because I had less melanin in my skin. And also the theater that used to be on the square, the plaza, and then there was the Imperial just down the street. I could sit in the theater down front. Oralene couldn't do that. She had to sit in the balcony. So, you know, that's, and let me go back to the monument thing just a moment. One of the things I kept hearing about is, you know, and I'd see in the paper, well, you're trying to erase our history. You're trying to remove history. Well, we're not erasing any history. You can still go to a textbook. You can Google and find out all the history you want about Zebulon B. Vance. What we were saying It was time to repurpose that square, make it a square for everyone, that it was welcoming to everyone. And by removing that monument, there were two other monuments that were removed down by the courthouse. And so what we're saying, we're not taking anyone's history. We're simply saying we're no longer going to, in public places, honor Confederates and the Confederacy.
And if I can just jump in kind of as a final thought, guys, is I hope what you said is true. I love how you describe that in terms of who you honor, but I hope, folks, that we can still read this kind of stuff in history books, because the way things are going now too, who knows, if it's upsetting to some people to read about the bad stuff that some people did. Well, so what do you do? Just, it's incredible that some people just want to bury that, and like it never happened, and strange times. Anyway, guys, I got to not run, but I have to wrap up this broadcast. Dr. Simmons, let me ask you one more time, if you can, if folks want to find out about the association and all the cool stuff you're doing, best bet is to do what? Go to the website?
Yes.
And that is what again, please?
MLKasheville.gov.
Okay. And I want to thank you both for the work you're doing, because again, a lot of good stuff. And as you pointed out, Dr. Simmons, you keep busy. It's incredible, but all year round, it's not just a 1 day, 1 month occasion. So I want to thank you for all you're doing. David King, I'd like to thank you as well. And I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and hopefully we'll bump into each other sometime in the near future. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good.